Welcome to another meetup of our series An Evening with. Hello. Today we are hosting a meetup about facilitating online Agile Retrospectives with Enrico Teotti, who is part of Avanscoperta and one of our trainers as well. Ciao, Enrico.
Hey, hello, everyone.
Hello and welcome. So this evening, Enrico, who of course has an awesome name, will be sharing some tips and insights on how to get the most out of your Agile retrospectives and how to successfully facilitate online sessions. The meetup will be enriched by your questions. So every now and then we'll be stopping to read your questions so that Enrico can answer them. And also this will make it a bit more interactive, of course. So how to ask questions? Well, we have the YouTube live chat, which is a panel just on the right-hand side if you're on desktop or below the screen if you're on mobile. So feel free to write your questions anytime and we'll be answering them. Enrico is also the trainer of our Online Facilitation Praxis Camp, and some more details will be shared with you later on. So that's enough from me now. Enrico, over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Enrico. If you can send me a message with the chat, I'll try and keep an eye on the questions as they come in. And all right, let me start sharing my screen here. So you should be able to see the slides on my background here. And so I think we missed the first one. There you go. All right, so back on the very first one. So this meetup is like an hour long. The first 20-30 minutes, we're going to go through a series of slides. Like Enrico said, we'd like you to ask questions in the YouTube chat, and as well as like some prompts. I'm going to give you some prompts here and there, so it'll be good if you can contribute in some of that. My name is Enrico Teotti. I work with Avanscoperta. I'm an Agile coach and visual facilitator. I have a background in software development and starting in 2001. I've actually won the Agile coach portion, and I'm working on a different definition. What I like is this sentence here: midwife of problems rather than the offer of therapies. Oftentimes we have this concept of the expert that comes in and fixes everything, which doesn't really resonate with me at all. And if you know where this quote is from and you want to put it in the chat, you're going to get some bonus points. Otherwise, I'll reveal that at the end. So I do some visual facilitation. That's actually going to be part of what we do today in the second part. I worked and lived in Europe for about 6 years. Then I was in Australia, in Sydney for 7 years. And then in the US, I was in New York City, Los Angeles, Colorado, all up for about 6 years, always in the software development realm. Only in the last 4 to 5 years, 6 years, I kind of like switched more and more into facilitation because my journey through software development reached a point where I needed something else. And facilitation was the way to resolve some of the conflicts, some of the situations that I found myself in. And those things that early on were just like technical issues, bugs that could be fixed, made me realize that there was like a human aspect to it, which could not be fixed like a bug can. And through this presentation, we talk a little bit about that, and we'll discuss that in the open questions at the end. You can find me as Agent EO on Twitter, where I tweet about stuff like visual facilitation and some tips about Miro and Zoom, like how to share your Zoom things when you share your screen and other stuff. So you can find me with that name. I also host a podcast about retrospective facilitation, which is called This is Retrospective Facilitation. And like I said, we will go through some visual sketchnoting during the Q&A. So this is actually the backbone of this presentation. So I kind of sketched it out to get my head around the kind of things that I wanted to go through. And I felt that it's all kind of like connected, the facilitation of online Agile retrospectives. And the other thing that I want to remind is this quote from Glenda from Human System Dynamics, that in complex systems, answer has short shelf lives, but good questions serve you forever. So I hope that at the end of this presentation, you're gonna have like some prompts and some questions that will help you in your journey facilitating online Agile retrospectives. And if you wonder about the Agile aspect of this, you do not need to be Agile to run a retrospective. We'll see that as we go through. So the first portion is the facilitation aspect of this. And I like to use the 3 roles that the IIEF, the International Association of Facilitators, gives to the facilitator: the architect, meaning the person that clarifies the purpose and outcome of sessions, the person that can decide what kind of like structure, or do we need structure for this session, as well as like the pilot. So you pilot the group, you have the group going from A to B and kind of like handle turbulences and unplanned diversion and problems or issues, as well as the guide. And here I like to use Sam Kinner's definition of the 4 functions of the facilitator, like to encourage full participation, to promote mutual understanding, to foster inclusive solutions, and to cultivate shared responsibility. Now, that's what the role of the facilitator is like, but oftentimes that's not our title, that's not our mandate. So I'd like the audience to put in the chat, what is your role? What is your mandate? Are you a tech lead, a scrum master? Are you the team's product manager? Are you a contractor helping, facilitating retrospectives and other sessions? What's your relationship with the group? Are they reporting to you? So yeah, feel free to put this in the chat, and I'm gonna open that up so I can take a peek. And Enrico, if you can send me the link in our Slack channel in the one-on-one that we have, so I can open that directly, the link to the YouTube. Thank you.
Yeah, on its way to you.
Awesome. All right, so we get a couple of Scrum Masters. And yeah, so I think clarifying what the, again, the mandate is in this role of the facilitator that you're covering. I think it's pretty important because, and let me go back to full screen again, because we all have some bias. And in my last role, when I was in Los Angeles, I was a product manager for the team, but I was also facilitating the retrospective. So clarifying this stake is critical so that the group and yourself can kind of like be aware of your bias. Not how much your bias, not if, but how much. So you will still be affected by your bias, but so clarifying that with the group is important. And here are some ideas that might work to manage your bias. And what would it be like if you co-facilitate? What would it be like if you rotate the facilitator within the team? And would the team be willing to fit in that facilitation role? Would they like to learn about facilitation? And what would it be like to maybe just switch your virtual background when you talk as Enrico, the product manager, or Enrico as the facilitator? And then eventually it's good to have a gauge, in my opinion, on what kind of conversations need external help. It's a little bit like trying to figure things out with your other half, with your life partner. And at some point, it might be useful to have a mediator or a couple therapist. And this, in your work environment, can be a contractor, an external facilitator, or it can be someone from a different team. So creating those pools of facilitator guilds can help mitigate bias within your team, within your team roles. And moving to online. So I don't like to use the word virtual. I like to use online better, because virtual sounds like it's virtual, it's not quite real. But for many, this is like the new normal, and for many, this has been normal for a while. So there is this concept of the digital constraint, and now my green screen is going to play funky, so you'll see me looking a little bit weird. And so in those digital constraints, there are like some questions that I like to ask before a session, especially around the network speed. What does that speed mean for your tool? Is this person, this group, under a VPN? Is that prohibiting some of the tools or some of the things that I want to do from happening? One of my colleagues was on a offsite, and his speed, so we got him to check his speed before going onto one of our online retrospectives, and it was like 0.13, 0.12. By the way, download and upload matters a lot. So when people say, oh, I got a 20 meg connection, that could be a 20 meg download, but if the upload is like sub meg, that connection is not going to be great. So always try and gauge both download and upload. And so what I did is I throttled my internet connection to check what would it be like to use, in this case, it was Miro, with that speed. So being prepared is important when you're in a room, but when you're online, it's really of paramount importance. So be aware of like what kind of like group are you dealing with? What kind of network do they have? And hardware. What kind of CPU, RAM, admin privileges they have, monitor sizes, so that when you're into the session, you're not finding out that, oh, they can't install this or that, or their CPUs is maxed out and they cannot open your video chat tool and a browser. Familiarity is really important, like finding out like what are they using today, and maybe adjusting what you usually use with what they're familiar with. So not being stuck with, this is the tool that I use, this is the tool that you're gonna use. And the other aspect that is like really important online is like, how much of a full day do they have? And when is the best time to run this retrospective? How long should we run it? Remember, like Zoom fatigue and online calls fatigue. So creating breaks here and there, I think it's important. This is my setup. I have like two external screens, and one laptop screen. So the two screens one is dedicated to looking at people, one is for the share screen, and one is for the chat and nonverbal feedback. So if you can't control everyone else's setups, but you probably, hopefully, can control yours. And increasing your screen real estate helps a ton. So which interactive approach? And I'm gonna skip this slide and I'm gonna jump into this one. So what approach works for your context? So where are you now? Where do you want to be? How do you get there? There isn't like, oh, you should use, I heard like this week, someone was saying, oh yeah, everyone is moving on to Miro. I'm gonna have to learn Miro. And I don't like that, because it really depends on where is your group at. And so like choose a tool that works for your context. And I see those three overarching kind of like spaces. One is the video call chat approach, where, and as long as it's an interactive approach, I think you're golden. I only see issues when you over constrain your group and you only have one person able to manage this tool. But as long as it's interactive, like a chat is a way to start connecting with people. Using a Google document, sharing off a document, and Of that, we have a retrospective template that we shared early on this week, and we'll share with the slides, that demonstrates how Google Slide can be an effective tool to run an Agile retrospective. At the end of this session, we will run a feedback on how the meetup went on a Google Slide. And then you have like mural, those digital whiteboard approaches that are kind of like the pinnacle of what technology offers today, and the kind of infinite white space, but they come at a cost, like learning cost. So it really depends on where your group is at. And maybe I'm gonna ask, like, if you wanna put in the chat, what approach are you taking? Are you mostly just using the video call chat approach, like sharing documents, or like the digital whiteboard approach? So yeah, if you wanna put that in the comments, I'm gonna try and open that window. Well, in the meantime, I saw like Agile Coach, Scrum Master facilitating thoughts and unleashing creativity. Also, an external facilitator. Yeah. So, which approach are you taking? Is it like, are you just using the video chat and tools like Zoom, for example? They allow you to annotate the screen, so you can get really creative with it and use it as a way for individuals to put in stars on the slide that you have on, or to just like put in text. So you can really get creative, and the cost of that is really low. Most people can get into the chat and start contributing. Digital whiteboard I see coming in. Specific tool that is called Parable. Oh, that one I don't know. I need to check it out. And that's the other aspect of this. Just this week, I found out this other tool that I didn't know. Let me see if I have a. Yeah, I have a slide here, which is called Spatial Chat. And with this thing, you're seeing little faces, and I don't know if people have used it yet, but you see little faces. And what is the biggest issues when you are in a call is that you only have one channel. So I talk and you listen, or you talk and I listen. With this fancy tool, you can move around and like you were in a room, and you hear. So in your headset, you get the audio of whoever you're closer to. So technology evolves pretty fast, and keeping looking out is the answer. So there is no good and bad. It's whatever works for you. I was really astonished by how much data Miro uses when I had this colleague with that slow connection compared to a Google Slide. Where are the calls? I'm looking at some of the basketball. And retro. Also depends on the team. Yeah, so really that is the key takeaway. Like, depends on the team. Keep iterating, keep looking around. Where are you now? Where would you like to be? How do we get there? Now, the next slide is the facilitating online Agile retrospectives. What is Agile? I call it define the best buzzword after pizza. Because if you ask what pizza is, and I lived 6 years in the States, 7 in Australia, people have very different opinions on what it is. We're not gonna dig into that. I have a strong opinion on what pizza is. It's the one on the left that I made, but I don't mind the deep dish. I definitely don't like Domino's. To me, like, Agile is synonymous with embracing uncertainty. The fact that we won't be able to know everything. It's pointless to plan everything. And the other aspect too is inspecting and adapting. So standing in inquiry. And that is really the core of a retrospective. The 12th Agile principle, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly, is the core of what a retrospective is for. And so when I read Team Reflects, this is some notes that I took during a retrospective I was sitting in, and there were 23 topics, and people talk for like a handful of minutes. Is that reflection? Getting one action item after like a few minutes of discussion, is that tuning and adjusting? So I argue, and I create these like dimensions of like, you might, and I use the 12-hour principle as a definition. So it's an agile retrospective if it's run at regular intervals. Does the team reflect on how to become more effective? Does the team then tune and adjust its behavior accordingly? If it does, if you're following kind of like those guidelines, then you might call it or not call it, but you're basically running an agile retrospective. But if it's run wherever we need it, if it's dropped because we are too busy and it's not really run a regular interval, it's run whenever it happens, or if the team doesn't really reflect and just jumps to solutions, then you're in that kind of like realm. It's not really an agile retrospective. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of the online templates and tools are kind of like leading you in that space. This 3-column approach is very much like, oh, what didn't go well? What can we do about it? Skipping a fundamental step, which is in the 5 steps, which we'll see in a moment, is the generating insights, is the reflection portion. I talked about this online. Esther and Diana, that wrote the Agile Retrospective book, replied and pitched in about this 3 columns topic. So you can see their comments as well. And yes, a facilitator that is really skilled can kind of get something out of it, but those 3 columns send the wrong message. And so I wanted to point out like the what really an agile retrospective should be next, and how do we do that online. So at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. The 5 steps, and I'd like maybe in the comments, now is a good time to ask, how many of you are familiar with those 5 steps? And you can just write a couple of words in the chat if you are. And the other reason for me to ask those questions is so that I know how much to dig into one area or the other during this. And the 5 steps is basically a framework. At the core of it, there is what maybe some people know as adaptive action. What, so what, now what? At the outside of it, there is the opening and closing, which to me are critical to an agile retrospective. So you kind of set the stage, like you clarify, why are we here? What are we doing with this retrospective? And what kind of psychological safety and energy does this group have? And then the closing out. Are we clear on the next steps? How did this session go? And I was pretty, a few years ago, pretty like hardcore coming in, introducing the whole 5 steps. And that sometimes upsets people that use the 3 columns of different approaches. But one thing I'm really adamant about is clarifying at the beginning, like doing that check-in, see how people feel, and we'll see how to do that online shortly. And the closing out, running a mini retro on the retro. How did this go? That really allows to inspect and adapt on the retrospective itself, which is key to any other, in my opinion, agile process we have. So setting the stage. By the way, people say that you can't really read people online, but when you have like the luxury of having webcams on, it can be pretty clear when people are out of energy. So acknowledging that, slowing things down when we are online is important, is something important to acknowledge. Some ideas to set the stage online. There is the explorer, shopper, vacationer, prisoner, like a quick anonymous activity to find out what kind of energy you have. You can do the classic, how do you feel in one word? It's really important to focus on how do you feel right now. And I don't classify myself as a touchy-feely kind of person, but it's important to acknowledge that there is an aspect of what we do that is, we would say it's unrelated to work. Like imagine that you slept only a few hours, there was a bunch of noise, so you woke up, you're tired, and they also stole your car, or your cat ran away, and you're upset, you're annoyed. That will affect the way you work and you contribute with the team. And when you're not face to face, we need to be more, even more explicit, even more taking time to ask those questions. So setting the stage is an important step for that, kind of like slowing in and focusing on the work to do, but also like acknowledging how do we feel. One advantage is being online, like search for an image. How do you feel today in one photo? And this is an example with Google Slides doing that. This is actually how a photo that resonates with where you were a year ago and where you are today. So all those activities done online, much easier than in a room where you need to print and bring photos. And so if you want, maybe you can add like some setting the stage activities that you follow in the chat room. And then the closing out. So the closing out is another critical piece where you kind of like decide and document, okay, what happens next? What do we get out of this? Oftentimes online, but in the physical space as well, we kind of talk and talk and talk and nothing really happens. I like to use those two acronyms, like FINE for fast feedback, inexpensive, no permission needed, easy, and SMART, like specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. They are a way to kind of like, once we get to the end of the retrospective, what are we getting out of this? And what is the next step? It can be an action plan, it can be an experiment, or sometimes we don't have the time to kind of like create something solid, something that has consensus behind it. And in my experience, the better choice there is to, let's schedule another session where we clarify what refactoring if after the whole conversation, like refactoring the reservation class is a topic, rather than having an action item that says, let's refactor the reservation class. Who's going to do it? How specific is it? How are we going to measure it? Maybe we can have a follow-up session. The action item is following it up with the people involved in that. So it's okay to have a follow-up session with a purpose and an outcome. By the way, as I talk, I invite you to, it's hard for me to tell which things are obvious to you and which things are kind of new. So I invite you to like take note of what things make you shake your head, like, nah, this is crazy, and which one makes you nod in agreement. And so that during the Q&A, we can have a more lively discussion. And yeah, you can question. So the closing out, this is what we're going to do actually during this session at the end of this meetup. How did the session go? How did the retrospective go between 0 and 4, where 0, this is a complete waste of time, and 4, this is the best session of my life? Put in a post-it note with the return on time invested on the number that represents your return on time invested. And I like to ask for a delta and a plus. The delta is the one idea that would have made you go up 1 point. What is something that is different? What is some like a little change that if it happened, you would have voted one number up? So if it was a complete waste of time, what would have made this session just mostly a waste of time? What is one idea? And then ask for the plus for something that you liked during this session. It's important to focus on the positive. So opening and closing, sandwiches, the adaptive action, like the what, so what, now what? And we need those steps. And oftentimes we skip one, and we'll see it shortly. So in the guided data, here we can use those 3 columns to kind of get a shared perspective, get all opinions, because everyone has a piece of the truth about what happened in either your last iteration or if you have a theme that you're focusing on. You can do that in Google Slides, as simple as like they have those little post-it notes that you can kind of leverage. The problem is with some of those templates is that often you end up what I call a whack-a-mole game, when you're trying to fix every single thing that comes up. And that is a single loop learning kind of approach, a premature convergence kind of approach, which is adequate for business as usual items, but skips this generating insight step, which should make the team reflect on where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? And so online, especially tooling, kind of like they might like bring you to that kind of like conclusion. If we look at any mural retrospective template, I've been actually asking them to introduce the 5 steps, because those 3 columns, what went well, what didn't go well, actions, sends a signal, especially online, that's what a retrospective is, and that's really not true. The generating insight step is where we foster divergent thinking. We go through this, what Kainer calls a grown zone, where as a facilitator, we are trying to promote mutual understanding. We're trying to help people hang in there. And this role of the facilitator, it might not be your sole role. It might be something that when I was a principal engineer, I was sharing with my engineering practice, something you might share with a group. So you might come up with team agreements that allow you to run a group facilitation. But this generating insights is where you create this double loop learning, where instead of trying to fix everything, you have this like target condition, you focus on one thing, on one change. And now I had a question somewhere like, when is this adequate? Like, is it bad then that those things come up and people kind of tackle them one by one? I don't think it's bad. It's not about being good or bad. It's about, in my experience, I tackle those separately. If there are issues that we can discuss in a couple of minutes, like the list that I showed, that can be done maybe after stand-up. I was actually running a daily mini retrospective, a 15 minutes retro, where those low-hanging fruit, which are important, can be tackled, and then focus the iteration retrospective on larger topics, on deeper topics, on experiments, on how can the whole team work more effectively. And in this space, Kevin and Stacy's matrix, what kind of things are we looking at? Are we looking at issues that are obvious? Do we have like a lot of consensus? This is a business as usual issue, or are we in the realm of complexity? Are we far from agreement? So determining what we are looking at as we generate insights is important to tackle one way or the other, that kind of situation. All right, we're gonna skip this. So generating insights, again, one idea is imagine the next iteration is perfect. What is it like? What did you do? This is like one activity. Again, retrospective, you go on, I think Retromat is the first thing that comes to mind, but you can find a lot of activities that fit in those 5 steps. And reflecting on where is my group? What kind of like online transition would I want to use with this? Which kind of like tool do I want to use comes after finding out where the group is at. Eventually, you want to decide what to do. So you want to get to that plan, next steps, come to convergence, and help the group create a sustainable agreement. One activity, this is represented in Miro, is the circles and soups. But this very same activity is in the Google Slide template that we've shared. So there isn't so much a constraint in doing thing in one space or the other. It really depends on where the group is at and what the group is familiar with. One thing I like to do is to use Kainer's gradients of agreement. So once we have an experiment, find out from the group, do a quick poll. How much support do we have? Is it like I really like it at the top, or not perfect, but it's good enough. I don't understand this issue well enough, or I'm not on board with this, don't count me in. So seeing where the group is at allows you to determine, is this action item even going to happen? If there's like, there's no consensus on like what we're talking about, you're taking on action items that maybe the group doesn't have energy for. Is it valuable to take them on? So we're coming to an end to this like presentation E part, and we're going to move into more the Q&A portion. And I'm going to leave you with some questions. What is the purpose and the outcome of your retrospective? What is your mandate with the team? Are you the manager? Are they reporting to you? Are you an external contractor? What's the group technological status? What's that proficiency, network speed, CPU, screens? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And how can you get there? Finally, what is something I said that made you, again, shake your head, and why? And what is something I said that made you nod in agreement, and why? So we're done with this, the presentation portion, and we're going to open up to Q&A. There's a few resources that I think, if you're interested in this space, are valuable. The one at the end, the Radical Candor book, is really good for people that are managers and reports, as well as facilitators. Where the action is great about how to create meetings that don't make people go super bored, and they have a purpose and outcome. And the others in between, I'll let you discover, but they're around facilitation, and adaptive action is about leveraging uncertainty and a little bit of the complexity around. There's going to be a Lean Coffee that we're going to start like next week. So it's going to be an online facilitation lab where we can experiment and chat about that. So that's going to come in through the newsletter and through links in this video. There's also a Praxis Camp, like a 2 weeks long, 3 days plus 3 days, to immerse ourselves in online facilitation. And there's also a retrospective, and retrospective is run monthly through the podcast, where we just reflect on how we run our retrospectives. And that is it. So we are now open to the Q&A. So if people have questions, they can, I think, put them into the chat, or I think Enrico is going to share the Zoom link. And so we're going to be on the same call, and we can communicate that way.
Exactly. So for the first time, if you wish to be part of the conversation in real time with Enrico and with us, we are going to open the Zoom call. So I will share with you the link to the Zoom video. You are going to be recorded and going on YouTube. That's for full disclosure. But you can definitely join if you wish to have a more human interaction, let's say so. Here we go. But yeah, you can keep the questions coming if you want. And we'll see you in the chat if you wish. Otherwise, we carry on this way, and it will be also good.
Yeah, totally cool if you want to ask questions in the chat as well. And when I picked the topic of the of this talk, like facilitating online Agile retrospective, and I kind of sketched this out, what I realized is that Agile and retrospective, they kind of like, sometimes Agile ends up in this like checklist of like very mechanical kind of step, and retrospectives that tackle, I call it business as usual issues, kind of lead into the same off the same cliff. So that's where they kind of like both goes into that way. But retrospective following what, so what now what cycle that never ends are really the powerful one. And the ones that can adapt to switch to an online format. By the way, I pushed Enrico to do this, inviting people into the call. But yeah,
no worries. We had actually 2 learners who wanted to join us, but I wasn't quick enough.
I saw that in the comments.
I just re-asked them to join us if they wish, but you can also carry on asking. There you go, Gennaro. Hello.
All right, connecting the audio. Hey, Gennaro, how are you doing?
As it happened to me last week, I can hear myself on the video, on the YouTube video of Gennaro.
Hi,
Hey,
good evening.
Gennaro. Ciao, good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Not too bad. A little bit tired right now because
I can imagine.
I had 2 retrospectives during this day from this morning.
How did that go? And how did your retrospective go, Gennaro?
Gennaro, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think it's a good idea if you turn the volume off of the video, because now you can hear us
Yes.
in the Zoom, so we don't have the feedback.
Okay.
Excellent. So go on, Enrico, please.
Yeah, how was your retrospective? How did they go, Gennaro?
Well, the most critical part is to be sure that all people are engaged during the retrospectives. They are always it's hard to collect all the information, all the what happened, but what I really find difficult is how to be sure that the people are engaged, because as you know, when we work together in the same room, we can use the all the part of the communication, non-verbal, how they move, so all those parts that online you lose all this part of the communication. So
yeah.
I find this really difficult.
Yeah, I think they transition to something different, like the nonverbal aspects. We have to be much more. We really have to be aware of it. Like you said, we can't like fix like nonverbal feedback, but we can, like in some video call apps, they have the nonverbal feedback, or we have to create spaces. At least what I do is I create spaces on the board to say, to express that, oh, I need to take a break, please slow down, or go faster. But yeah, we definitely have to be more aware of it.
Okay, and what about because our retrospectives are unfortunately they don't take enough in my opinion, because we have a lot of teams to follow. I have more than one team, and so I have about 1 hour or 90 minutes to have our retrospective. So I try to find a way to have an effective retrospective in 90 minutes. And sometimes it happens that we go out of the focus. For example, okay, we found some topics, we collected some topics, we voted some topics, so we start talking about them, and maybe we are not able to reach an action, reach the goal, to find a good action to work on. So some tips, for example, that you can give.
Yeah, I mean, I think earlier one of the slides I had on was about the SMART and FINE objective. Like looking at it really depends how far in that discussion is, usually, in my opinion. In some discussions, when there is focus, there is energy. Like, is it like an energy from the whole group, or is it an energy only from a few individuals? And usually, like, if like during that polling phase, when we you said that it goes out of focus, like finding out where does the group have the most energy in terms of like what to do next. Focusing on that, to me, helps. Like visualizing where do we have more energy, where do we think, which action, and I think this activity is called IIEC. Yeah, IIEC. It's I forgot the acronym, but the idea is like, how much energy do we have? Who is gonna commit to do this thing? What kind of idea do we have? And what kind of like return are we gonna get on this idea? And so visualizing that helps. Okay, where should we go next? What should we pick? And then in terms of the action is, I believe that rather than picking an action that is not sustainable, is not a sustainable agreement, it's better to ask the group, do we have energy to follow this up? Is this something that we want to chase? And who is going to be in this conversation? What's the purpose of this conversation? And what's the outcome of that conversation? So to me, scheduling, I was under the impression for the longest time that the action has to happen during the retrospective. We got to get it done during the retro. But sometimes some of those discussions that go through the grown zone and the divergent zone, they're big. This touches back on the Canavan example that I made. If it's a complex issue, it might not be enough that the amount of time that we have to gather data, generate insight, and decide what to do. And so in my opinion, it's better to ask the group, do we have time to do this? Or shall we follow up?
Yeah, it happens that often when we have no action is because the issue we are talking about is something not in our hands. Is something that happened in relationship with other departments, with other colleagues, or in the environment we are working in. So, and you struggle trying to find something that the team can act. But of course, not all the topics can be managed by the team. Not all the actions can be managed by the team. So sometimes it happens this. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, of course, before in one of years, the slide that you shown before, you talk about the outcome, the actions, the plan, and I agree on all of this. In my humble opinion, I think that sometimes the retrospective is also good for an alignment of all the team. I mean, even if we don't have a real action, something tangible, something that you can touch. the moment that allow us to be aligned on some topic, to clarify some behavior. Why you don't did this when I asked you? Okay, I think that this is a great point for the team. This is a good moment for the team to grow up and to create that trust that is the basic brick for each team.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely like the time and the purpose of like aligning the team. Where I have a delta is I wouldn't call that a retrospective, simply because so it's the what, so what, now what. So if we simply share information, it's good, we should keep doing it, but we should also outline that maybe that is not a retrospective, that is more like a how did the week went. Or we can take the next step and ask, where do we want to go and how do we get there? Because to me, that is the inspect and adapt portion. Not to say that the alignment that you described is bad, but what I've noticed is that when that is all that happens, there is sometimes a feeling of we didn't really get anything done, even though it is getting something done. And to me, sometimes it's valuable to say during the setting the stage, when you set the purpose of the retrospective, we just want to share information. We are purposely not taking action. And that is okay if that's where the group is at. The issue I see is that when, again, people hear retrospective, it's like when someone think pizza, and people have different opinions on what it is. And yeah, so clarifying the purpose and outcome is a good way to avoid misunderstanding, where some people get frantic about, oh, we didn't get anything done. Well, that was a plan. And it can be okay to be like that. Personally, I think that there has to be a now what, like a next step, not necessarily a detailed plan, but that's kind of like part of to me, what being agile means, like iterating. But I agree with you, totally agree with you with trust.
Okay. I don't know if there is some other one connected. I think I'm using all the time all the resources.
You're the only one who joined the Zoom call, and I don't see anything in the chat. So if people are still connected and they want to ask questions, ask away, or join the meeting.
I guess, Gennaro, we can carry on the three of us. I'll include myself with the conversation, and
okay, great.
Don't feel sorry. It's just let's carry on, and there's a lot of stuff that you are talking about, which is really interesting. So no problem.
Okay. One of the things that you called out, Gennaro, is like when stuff is out of control, and this, like, we discuss things that so we don't control, and I assume we don't influence either, so we don't know anyone that can help with that. So there is still something that the team can do, which is define how do we respond to this as a team. So team responds, and I mean, if we can focus on the other one, I think you already covered that. Like, we try and focus on things that we control and influence, but sometimes that's unfortunately not the case, or not where the energy is at. So maybe we can come up with a plan on how can we respond to this thing, and our response might shift patterns or influence the system. So yeah, when I'm in that situation of like, oh, stuff is out of our control, there's nothing we can do, well, we can decide how we respond to it. If it's a director of technology walking in and bringing us switching what we do, we're like, you gotta work on this other thing, and they do it with Luke one day, with Mark another day. It just keeps happening, and maybe as a team we can agree to respond to the director of technology with the same sentence. Well, what would you like me to? What's the highest priority thing right now? Or if the problem is around jumping between priorities, having a way to respond might make us, might give us something, and again, influence the system.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree. Often we found some way to manage also these kind of situations. Sometimes, rarely, I have to say, but sometimes it's something we don't find anyway, or it's something that we can discuss with the whole department during, for example, the release retrospective. We have our retrospectives are every iteration. So after each iteration, we use Scrum, of course. So at the end of each iteration, we have our retrospective and as a team. And then we have a release retrospective due to the fact that we are using SAFe as a scaling framework. At the end of the release, we have this moment where all the department can have this inspect and adapt moment. And so sometimes, so if something was not in the control of the team, under the team control, then probably is brought at the release retrospective, because it's something that can be discussed at the department level. We can scale the issues.
Cool.
I would like to change a little bit the topic, and thinking at the setting the stage of the retrospective. When we were on site, okay, in our rooms, and we had our retrospectives. Often I was used to have some ice-breaking exercise, some game maybe in order to create a good atmosphere, let me say. Of course, online retrospectives, I find that is really difficult to have the same activity. Sometimes I tried with a game, but only once or twice, and so I would like to ask you some tips on this side, if you have some experience on how to have this moment in order to lower the pressure on the team before starting with the retrospective.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on the group. So every group is always like in a different kind of like space. And so something that I've seen working that is like, it's very simple, is how do you feel today in one word? Or
Okay.
put in a photo of that represents how you feel today. And bringing in photos, maybe sometimes it's a cartoon character or a car or something. And maybe you can say, what was the last iteration like to you? So using this metaphor of the image, and in Google Slides, and you can just like Google the photo, copy paste. In Miro, you have like a Google, like a photo search. So most tools allow you to do that pretty easily. And I think the adding the visuals, like the photo stuff, helps in terms of like activating minds, but as well as like, again, then it depends on like what kind of group you're with. So if they can stand up and move, and not everyone can, if they can do that, like one thing could be, bring me a pen or bring me a glass, and they have to, yeah, like a glass of water or like just an empty glass, so that they have to walk somewhere in their environment, find that thing and bring it to you, or find something red. So that is one way to make them also move, which again, not for everyone. Those are two. I usually like to change up. Enrico knows to change up activities.
Mm-hmm.
So every retrospective can like switch it around a little bit so that people don't get kind of fossilized on it. But yeah, those are kind of like the two spaces I've seen, and we not with Enrico, but we played games as well. Like there is this soccer game. It's a collaborative soccer online game. I'll try and put it in the show notes. So there can be very simple online in-browser game, but it really depends on the group. It can really I've seen that backfire as well. I mean, I work with groups that hated even appreciations. So running a round of appreciation, and this person really dislike that. And so it's a little bit contextual.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, I think the suggestion of like running the roti at the end, how did this retro go? What's something that you liked? What is something that would make you go up 1 point is critical to make this systemic learning. So you just embed the learning in the retrospective, so that stuff can emerge.
Interesting. Can you share some of the games that you mentioned? Some online game, if you have.
Yeah. We can put that in the show notes, because let me see if I have them here. I can put it in the chat actually.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing that I found really interesting in what you said is about how to share the facilitator role. The fact that we are trying to how to say, to keep the teams self-organized in having their retrospective. We would like to have, I really think that the real meaning of the agile is the agility, the mindset that is behind the agile. So the continuous improvement, the inspect, adapt, and to find the every time a new way to improve the team, the product, the quality, and so on. And so what I would like to see in my teams is to see them be autonomous in having the retrospective. So I think that they should be able to facilitate this event. So I would like to ask if you have some kind of experience in this sense. I mean, if you have some tip on sharing the facilitator role. I don't know I know the how to say, the doctor pattern. You know. That allow the team member to experiment this role
so
in different steps.
I think the first question that I have is, do they want to facilitate?
Wow.
Because I've seen that backfire pretty bad, where it was kind of imposed. So we were actually software consultancy that was like enabling Agile. And one of the things that that was often happening that I didn't like was forcing people to facilitate, or not forcing, but putting them on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, I don't think facilitation is for everyone. I think myself, like when I started working like 20 years ago, I would have not been a good facilitator. I had very little empathy. I was just not ready. So finding out where this group is at is key to, is a stepping stone to then sharing the facilitator role. Then in other teams, there were, once we realized that it was in their interest to learn like those facilitative skills, then pairing, which I think is in line with what you were talking about, the doctor, I assume, like pairing and co-facilitating is a valuable stepping stone, where this person can kind of like get confident in a safe environment, as well as other things that I think worked for me and I've seen working is creating facilitators guild, or like this online facilitation lab that we're going to start with Avanscoperta, where people can come and in a safe environment practice facilitation. So creating those environments within the companies. So we had that in my company in LA, where people could kind of practice this stuff is important. So that then when you actually do with a team, you feel more confident. You're still preparing perhaps for a little bit of time, but it really comes from people that want to do it. Forcing them to do it, it can be, yeah, it can really backfire.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Yes, absolutely.
And I see we have another person in the.
Indeed.
Yeah. So if you want to
yes.
say a word or share questions, feel free to.
So we have Badr on the chat. Hello.
And I pasted the links to some of the games in the.
Yeah, I did it
Enrico,
already on YouTube.
Cool.
And the question from Badr, I will read it out loud. I asked. Or Badr, do you want to go ahead? Oh, okay. Audio isn't working. Fine. No worries. I'll read it. Thanks for joining us, first of all. So the question is, what do you do if the team thinks the process is as good as it can get and just use the retro to talk mostly about positive stuff and maybe a few minor issues?
Yeah, so that's a great problem that often happens. Like everything is fine. We don't really need to do much anymore. I think the imagine the future. There are activities that I think help dig into that. And for example, one I think is called creative destruction. And there are like prompts that create an environment that kind of foster that kind of thinking. For example, one is called TRIZ, and it's one of the liberating structure. But it goes along the lines of imagine that we were doing the worst we could possibly do to make. So we start from like, yeah, everything is fine, and maybe we also do a round of appreciations, kind of like solidify why everything is going okay. So that is a good kind of like stepping stone to then dive into when I dive into this creative destruction or destructive creation. And you basically say, well, what if we were making the worst possible job at working together? What if we were hating each other? What would we be doing? And it kind of becomes a little bit of a joke. So people come up with, I think when we did it with Avanscoperta, I wrote something about we're working in mines, because some of it reaches like, it becomes kind of like a tricky joke, but through going through these jokes, something crops in. And then the next prompt is, think about anything we do today that is remotely connected to anything that we just said. So you don't start just by saying, what can we do better? But you start by framing it in a different space. And so that helps foster that thinking. The other path that I sometimes take is, everything is perfect. Okay, how can we make more of it? How can we radiate all these good things that we're doing? So that can be another prompt that takes a different angle to do that, but kind of like think outside of the box. Better, I don't know if that helps. If you want to give more context, feel free to do that in the chat, since your microphone doesn't work. Very interesting. Yes, cool.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
It works. Okay. Yes, thank you. That's yeah, thinking outside the box. That's really a good idea. Trees is something I'll have to look up. But yeah, that's very good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, another thing that you can do is called future backwards. And that's another one that basically you create a timeline. So you create a timeline of events from today. And sorry, you go from today to the past. So you don't create like a usual timeline like past, future. You go present, past. And then you create a two parallel timelines. One is the utopia, where everything goes so well that it's impossible to think of. And then you ask them to create one event. So this is like the blue ones are the event that lead up to today. And the green one are the utopia. And you ask them to create events that go backwards from the utopia. And then the utopia connects to today. And this event here is the one that is kind of like a critical event that allows the utopia to connect to the past. So and then you ask them to create a down there dystopia. So you create like what could like the worst possible thing, similar to Tris, worst possible thing that can happen working here, and one event at a time. How did we get there? And then again, you ask them to connect that with the past, and that event is again the critical one. And then similar to Tris, what is similar that we're doing today, and can I have them reflect in this visual way? Yeah, so that's another way.
Thank you. That's, that would definitely shake things up.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to send out the, so there's actually, yeah, the feedback form, yeah. So
shall I go ahead?
Yeah, yes, please. So we talked about this, like the feedback and the importance of like getting feedback. And so I don't know if people are still in the YouTube channel, but we're gonna send a URL there and give it to the people here in the Zoom call. And this is the example of the return on time invested that I like to run at the end of retrospectives. But really, we started running it at my last company for every meeting. Every session we had, we were running a return on time invested to find out how good use of your time was this. And so I invite you to do the same. On the left, there are the yellow Post-it notes that you can drag on. Hold on, you're not seeing my background. Okay, you're seeing now. And so you're gonna drag that Post-it on the number that represents the return on time invested for this hour-ish that we spent together, where 0 is this is a complete waste of time, I learned nothing. 1 is this is mostly a waste of time, but I learned one thing. 2, broke even, it was a satisfactory meetup session. And 3, better than average session, and 4 was awesome. So we usually move that Post-it on the number that represents the return on time invested. And I usually ask to put in the delta. So what is one idea, one improvement that would have made your return on time invested go up 1 point? And what is the plus? What is something that you liked about today's session? So the URL is in YouTube. This is simply a Google slide that in this case has a background for those columns so that people don't mess them around moving them. And we basically just shared it so that everyone can edit it. And it's a really quick way to get people to express some feedback. So yeah, we'd appreciate if you can do it for this meetup. And I think we are wrapping up. Enrico?
That's fantastic. Thanks, Theo. Thanks for the presentation as well, and wonderful insight to all the questions we've received. The video will be available on YouTube for the foreseeable future. I am going to share tomorrow some more resources, such as the link to Theo's workshop coming up, his online facilitation lab starting next Wednesday, and a couple more resources that he mentioned during the talk, such as the games, because they are in the YouTube chat, but as we know, sometimes YouTube chat is a bit funny, so we'll save them and send them out to you. Just a quick hello, Gennaro. Now I remember about you. We met at IIAD and you won the books from Goiko.
Yes.
Amazing. Good to see you again. Sorry for the caramba moment, but
it's
I had
always
to say hi.
it's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for being with us. Enrico, do you want to say last words?
Not really. If you have any question, any follow-up, you can hit me up on Twitter or find my full name on LinkedIn pretty easily. So yeah, otherwise we'll see in one of the upcoming sessions.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks really
everyone. Thanks for jumping in the call, Gennaro and Badr. Enrico, see you tomorrow. Yep. And we are learners. To the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.